Hi there, friends. Welcome to another episode of the Frankie 411 podcast. I'm your host, Haley Overseth. This episode, my guest is Leilani of The Magickal Solution. She's a natural espiritista mystica, an educator, a curandera, a diviner, a singer, and an activist. And she also hosts her own video cast, This Is How We Grow, which is on Spotify and YouTube, and I'll have links in the description below for you. Leilani was born spiritually gifted and began putting her abilities to use at the age of 2. With over 30 years of experience as a world-educated, solitary practitioner of the magical mystical arts, nearly 25 years of that helping thousands of people from around the world. Leilani now lives in Poughkeepsie, New York, home of the Poughkeepsie seer prophet Andrew Davis Jackson, with her husband and her dog. There, she continues to offer her spiritual services online and in her local community of NYC in the Hudson Valley. I do hope you enjoyed this conversation I have with Leilani. She has some very beautiful energy, and I enjoyed it very much. I hope you will too. Thank you so much for joining me today. We have Leilani from The Magickal Solution, and you just look absolutely amazing. You belong on some kind of magazine cover. I don't know. You look great.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And thank you for the invite to the show. I'm really excited.
I'm so happy to have you here. I've been checking out a lot of your stuff, your podcasts and things like that. I've been on your YouTube channel and I love your energy. You've got great energy. I'm so happy to have you here. So could you give just a little introduction to yourself, who you are and what you do?
My name is Leilani. I am a small business owner. The Magickal Solution is my business. And I'm also a small podcast host, just
Yep.
like you. My podcast is called This Is How We Grow. And basically, I just serve my community with whatever skills I can obtain until the day I die.
I love it. That's fantastic.
That's
So
pretty much it.
so my thing that I really want to know is how did you come to be where you are? Like what is it that puts you on this sort of the spiritual path? I think we all have different sort of origin stories, I guess, right? To the whole spiritual awakening journey that we find ourselves on.
For
What was
sure.
yours?
Oh man. Well, it was kind of a mixture of different elements all happening at the same time.
Isn't that
Um,
oh I
isn't
love it
that
when it's a storm
yeah?
like that, right?
Yeah, and looking back on it now, it just seems so orchestrated.
I feel that. Yes.
But yeah, I started showing my gifts of mediumship and being able to see entities around the age of 2. And this was something that my family, obviously being that young, it was something that my family just kind of allowed, like played into to an extent, right?
Very sort of
Um,
you have imaginary friends kind of thing, right?
yeah, but
Right.
but it wasn't like, oh, that's not real. They definitely allowed me to engage.
Right.
And
Okay. Very cool. Like, that's not everyone necessarily gets that kind of environment. So that's really cool.
dude, I have to admit my parents are pretty fucking awesome. Oh, I'm sorry. Am I allowed to?
Oh, you're good. No, you're
Okay.
totally fine. We're
Yeah,
adults and adults on YouTube can push buttons to go away if they don't want to be here. That's perfectly fine.
for sure. Yeah, my parents are so fucking awesome, and I have to give kudos to their parenting skills for sure. And so like around that time, that happened, and that has stayed as it is. And then around like 6 7, that's when my relationship with nature really started to expand, because around the age of 6 I had drowned, and after that drowning,
You have to go into detail on this story. What is this?
yeah, so and here's the wild part. I've been knowing how to swim since the age of 4. And so this wild situation occurred where, it was me and 2 of my cousins in, our big pool. And I get pushed into the deep end, which is usually no big deal. But for some weird reason, my body just refused to move. I went into like a catatonic state, if you will.
That's
And
so
it was
bizarre.
like so bizarre. And yet at the same time, like I was terrified, but at the same time, I wasn't. And according to my cousin, I was down there for a few minutes because he was in the house by the time, you
So
know.
you were just in the water before someone pulled you out, and
Yup.
that is
And
amazing. And
and then ever since then, it's just like, seeing auras, seeing just different things around. And part of that was really connecting with the elements in nature,
I
and
love it.
really having experiences with the elements which is what was insane. And so that was around 7. And
Okay.
then like around like 12 years old, that's when the divination curiosity, 11, 12 years old divination curiosity came in. And it
Okay.
was just
Are we
boom from
tarot
there.
tarot cards, or like what's your what was the
the
introduction into
the
divination for you?
introduction was a set of alchemy stones, which actually wasn't even a thing. It was a set that was created by an author, because they felt that the symbols in alchemy really had beautiful, like psychological, transformative information about them.
I
And so
love
she
that.
carved them into like these crystal rocks and sold that with the book. And I haven't found it since. I freaking lost that set 2 years
Oh
ago.
man, if anyone out there knows what that is or where to find it, like please
Please.
let us know. That is so cool. I love that.
Yeah, alchemy and hermetics. That was where the occult stuff came in for sure.
That's interesting because I would say that like I definitely didn't have like a drowning scenario or anything like that. But like I would say I had a similar sort of interest in the occult that kind of started from a very young age too. And just that
Mm,
curiosity and that very like I have that very intense connection to nature too. So I just love
yes.
that we ended up connecting and have it to have a conversation because I'm like it's because our energy aligns and I love it and that's just so exciting to me.
Yes. And, just like you said, being a little kid and being curious, what's really cool about us is that we never lose that curiosity growing up. And I think that that's why, we stay in this
Yeah,
field.
I love it because that is what drives me is curiosity about existence, about, okay, my story. And I think I'm at a point where like that's why I'm doing the podcast. I'm so super interested in everyone else's story now. Like I need to know more about you. Tell me about you. So
Right.
I wonder if you could go back a little bit into can you talk a little bit more about nature? How does that play into, I guess, maybe your experience, and is there something that you find helpful in, like for me, I know I find it helpful to be in nature to kind of tap more into my intuition. Can you talk a
Mm.
little bit about that?
Yeah, for sure. Throughout the entire time doing hardcore research in various different religious studies, right? I went from, alchemy, hermetics to Rosicrucianism to, I covered it all, right?
Mm-hmm.
And throughout the entire process, the connecting link was always the elements. You could find it everywhere. It was in every religion, in every mystic tradition, in every occult, every part of the
It's
world,
in, yeah, astrology.
everywhere.
Right.
So, because that was the connecting link, that's where I kept my focus. And because that's the spirits that I met first outside of the dead, the
Mm.
element spirits were the first ones to come to me and make themselves known. And so for me, nature is like, yeah, it's a place to go to like let off some steam and to like tap in and to meditate, but it's like also a place to really dive into how the elements play out in your body, your blood, the way you breathe,
Right.
all of that,
I
because you
love
are the
that.
elements and the elements are you. And once you get that in your mind, it's a whole different relationship.
I love that. I really do love that. That's something I feel like I'm going to listen and edit this later. And it's like, that's going to sink in even more. I need some time. I need some time to absorb that just a little bit. But so can you talk a little bit about then like what is that experience like, or what sort of communication are you, because I know for myself, trying to tap into things, or feeling and having a sense that there is, my inner being and other entities, like they're trying to talk to me.
Yeah.
So, but I know that some of what blocks that for probably a lot of us who are very curious about these things and want to tap into them, what blocks it to some degree is having certain expectations of what that communication looks like, right? And I
Mm,
try to remind myself very frequently, like, the universe does not speak English. The universe speaks vibration. You gotta
right.
right? Like, so can you talk a little bit about what that sort of interactive experience is like for you in your experience?
So coming from a Caribbean background, a Latin background, the experience with spirits is very literal. We
Okay.
can perceive them just as we can perceive people, and their interaction with us and our interaction with them is so much so that you can blur the lines as to where one begins and the other ends. Like it can get that serious. So in terms of, what is it like, I think the best way to describe what the situation is just to be very trustful in your own senses. Because I think a lot of people, when they think of mediumship, they think of like the clairs, for example, they
Mm-hmm.
assume it's some sort of extrasensory type or like a shadow version of our senses or something,
Mm-hmm.
but it is our senses and we're utilizing them. We're just going deeper into them. So like, for example, if you are clairaudient and you can hear spirits, but you're brand new at this and you're trying to figure out like how to do that without getting scared, you start with first allowing the sound to just be, and then you're going to listen through the sound to hear what's behind the sound, if that makes sense.
Okay. I'm going to have to try this. I love that you picked clairaudience because that is something that like I have that I'm like, okay, I know that I'm almost tapping into it. Like there's just a lot of things. It's kind of like I can look back at things like even years ago that I'm like, I remember that I heard something. There was no, but now
Yeah.
it's to the point where like I have words come into my head that I know aren't
Hmm.
me, right? And
Yes.
sometimes it's interesting to me because like there are times when, and it's when I get myself into a really very relaxed state. Generally, I might be meditating or it's like before bed, and I'm just kind of sometimes doing my visualizations, and sometimes it'll be like in an accent, or like there have been times that I've had words in other languages that I'm like, okay, I know I've heard that word and I think it's a German word. Like I'll have to go look it up and find what it means. Right.
Mm.
So it's listen through the sound. I'm going to have to, I don't know if you can go in more detail in that, like, but
Well, I think
because
we're
I have,
talking about two different clairs, because
okay, talk more about
that's
that.
more clear sentience, when they're able to put the thought in your mind for you, or when they're able to provoke your thoughts to create the message that they need to give you.
Okay.
Um, so that's a little different than clairaudience. You can have the perception of hearing what's happening in your mind, but it's essentially in there. It's a
Right.
clairsentient situation.
Okay.
So but when I'm saying clairaudience, I mean like literal,
See, and I've
there's a
had
sound.
that experience too, and for me lately, it's been a lot of my ears ringing, and
Mm,
it's
listen through it.
but it's interesting you say that, and I'm gonna have to try it because I've noticed that like it's been for a while that I've been hearing it, but in the last like few weeks and months, the pitch has gone up,
Yes.
like it's
Ah,
and I'm like, what does that mean? That's very exciting. So,
try and listen to it in the shower.
ooh, okay,
Okay, okay, if it doesn't come as a ringing in the shower, it will come almost like a choir or angelic voices
okay,
singing. It's
I'm
gonna
going to have to
sound
try this.
wild because the water is a conduit, so it's
Sure,
easy to
yeah,
tap in, when you're standing there and you're like, okay, I'm ready to listen.
I love
It's
it.
wild.
I know I love it. I'm going to have to try this. I'm so super excited. That's amazing.
And
So
I love that you're bringing in sound into this conversation. Sound is like such an esoteric, like, there's so
vibration,
much.
right? There's so
Yes.
much, like everything is vibration, and everything is sound, and just because we can't necessarily hear it with our human ears, it's kind of that intuition and tapping into the like you said, it's
Exactly.
not necessarily extrasensory. It's something that we have forgotten we are a part of and can
That we are
access.
capable of. Yup.
Right. So, and that's something that really fascinates me too. And I wonder if you sort of work with this or experience in what you do with the services that you offer,
Yeah.
I I do have a sense of like things are upgrading as like our collective human consciousness, right? That more people are becoming a lot more curious about these kinds of topics and are not sort of rejecting them outright the way that I certainly remember for myself growing up, right? Because being into the esoteric and the occult type stuff for me growing up was like taboo and it was wrong and it was, do you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
it's we've gotten to a place I think where there's so much more of this available. Do you see sort of I guess is there a progress that you see to maybe the
Oh, for
people you work with?
sure.
And can you talk a little bit about that?
For sure. I mean, you hit the nail. There's an increase in curiosity,
Mm-hmm.
and there's an increase of people with gifts as well. We're seeing more mediums, we're seeing more psychic activity, and we're seeing more elevation of those gifts. People being able to move things now, people being able to, like it's
I love seeing
yeah.
the telekinesis stuff that people do or the hydrokinesis stuff people do. I love seeing that.
It's crazy and it's awesome and I
It's
love it.
amazing. Yeah.
It's such an exciting time to be alive.
Isn't it? I think we are in just the most exciting time space reality that we could possibly be in as humans, aren't we? And I
Yes.
sometimes I have to remind myself of that. Like,
Mm,
you wanted to be here because this is exciting. So, like,
exactly.
let's not get caught up in some of those negative human subconscious programs that we're trying to let go of a little bit.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
is that can you talk about that a little bit? Do you work with that a little in terms of
I do, but not really. It's just a different form than the sort of conscious movement that's happening right now. Because like I said, I come from a Latin background, so we have a kind of spiritist tradition, if you will,
sure? Mm-hmm.
where the goal of every single person on this planet is to progress and
Right.
elevate. And that goal is going to be achieved through reincarnation eventually.
Okay.
And with the help of good spirits and with the help of their conduits, which are the mediums.
Mm-hmm.
So, the more people that get on board with that idea, there's also this other layer to it because it's like, okay, well, if we're all here to progress, we're all being given gifts of mediumship, and our mediumship and our reincarnation are and the good spirits are what assists us in our evolutionary process. What else assists us in our evolutionary process? And that extra layer is charity, good deeds, being a good person. And so this
Mm-hmm.
idea of evolving, the only way to do it is together and in harmony. You can't, there's no
Right.
way of this idea of progressing and being individualistic, or this idea of progressing and being the antithesis to that. You
Yes.
can't have both.
It's
And
not
so
it's not competition, it's harmony. We have to
exactly.
break out of that old cycle of, this idea that there's not enough for everyone and
Oh,
realize
there's
like
more than enough.
there's so much more than enough for everyone and we can absolutely share all of it and all
Yeah.
experience abundance. And,
And
I
especially if you don't approach it from a scarcity mentality. Let's not forget the reason why people think there's not enough for everyone is because people grab from that place of scarcity.
right.
And that is a tough mindset to get rid of. It has been systematically drilled into generations and generations of people.
Absolutely.
So to get that out of the mind is, it's almost like, all right, well, prove it to me. Because if you look at my lifestyle, I'm living in the hood, I got 3 kids, I'm working 4 jobs, like, like, prove it to me. Okay, if I,
Right.
and I don't blame them for feeling that way. And
Mm-hmm.
so, if the progression is something that we all truly want, we need to start there. You always, like, I think people forget the rule of nature. Like, it's either going to be one of two things: either you cut the limb off, or you go and you assist it, you fix
Mm-hmm.
it. And I think we're a world now that's starting to see that we need to help each other. That's the only way.
I love that. And it's something that, I kind of sometimes think to myself, like, well, why did I pick this incarnation in this particular location that I'm in, or, the kind of like background that I had. And I do think that sometimes that like there's a part of like your soul mission to some degree that says, well, you had to have some kind of an experience with those kind, like you said, the people who are, prove it to me, the people who don't want to believe because they have been so stuck in the mindset that they experience that as their life all the time.
Yeah.
And you have a different perspective. And it's like, I know I have a different perspective. It's like you selected to be in a space where you could see that because you needed to be seen. Your different perspective needed to be seen by those people, whether they ascribe to it or not in this lifetime. That's not the important thing. It's the exposure to your new mindset that is valuable. So it's kind of that grow where you're planted sort of thing, because you planted yourself here, even if you don't remember it. You chose to be
Right.
here.
Yeah, and I think it's that is a tough pill to swallow. Um, when you're speaking about marginalized groups, because or even just like speaking about just cultures around the world where you see, starving children or, sex trafficking or whatever.
Oh,
The
the
reality
things that
is,
make you just wish that you could just send
ugh,
all your good vibes and energy and just heal it and fix it. Just,
make it go away. Yeah,
yeah.
but the reality is that it's there. And
Hmm.
so to tell someone that they chose that is tough. It's a tough pill to swallow, and honestly, it's something I wouldn't want to say to someone because it doesn't help them where they are. And that's
Right.
the
And
goal.
that's,
I think, like, when we look at the, like, okay, so for example, someone asked me that same question not too long ago. They were like, Leilani, you know how can I possibly say that I chose this? Like, this is, I'm poor, I'm having so much. And I
hmm
said to them, I said, and the problem was is that they were blaming religion and God for this. I said, the problem is that you're blaming God and a religion that didn't have anything to do with that piece of what you're talking about. What you're talking about is a systematic problem from lower vibrational people that
right,
created that system.
right,
So we're not talking about you chose to have that
right.
system. Definitely
Exactly.
not.
It's that, I mean, and I like for myself, I say it really to speak to, like, I understand from the place and the perspective I have now through all these different rabbit holes that I've gone down and these interests that I've had for so long, right? I'm
Yeah.
finally in a place where I can say, I chose this for a reason. I appreciate it now. I can see the value in it now, and I
Yes.
can utilize that in a more positive way. But I absolutely, I'm not so far away from when I had that same feeling of blame everybody else, or I could not possibly have chosen, like having again that scarcity lackful mindset.
Yeah.
I very much still remember the worst moments of that for myself. And I certainly, feel the pangs of that sometimes still when I know, and I'm like, okay, you still got to let that go,
Right.
but that's part of, again, I think you have you place yourself in that because there has to be a part of you that believes you could learn from it in a way that would allow you to help others,
Exactly.
right? That you could use
Exactly.
it in a positive way for your community that you're in.
Yeah. At the end of the day, all spiritual systems start with self. All
Mm-hmm.
spiritual systems start with self. And whether you ascribe to past lives or spirit contracts or random, evolution, whatever you ascribe to, at the end of the day, there comes a point, just like what you did, where you just wake up and say, I'm in this circumstance. This is what the fuck it is.
Right.
All right, so like now I got to figure out how to get out of it. And you start empowering yourself, and I think that's the part that people need help with.
I agree.
And no judgment needs to be placed there. Nothing needs to be placed there other than the help and the smile, or
Mm-hmm.
maybe the money, or maybe the whatever, however you can do it. And I think that's another thing, Haley. I mean,
Yeah.
not to like totally bogard the conversation, because I love stuff like this, but
No,
that's,
yes, please do.
yeah, like that's like another thing too. Like, people assume that to do good deeds, to do charity, to be a good person means that you have to be financially able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, it could just pay a person a compliment,
No, really
smile,
though, the
like
energy you put out means so much more than you realize.
so
I
much
always think that,
more.
like, I'm that person that, like, and I've it's again recently kind of realized that I do it. I'm like, oh, I love bomb strangers a lot. Like, like I constantly, if I see someone who's looking good, I'm like, God, you look amazing, because you do.
Yeah, like
And it's
yes,
like,
girl.
yeah, like I am that person. I do that to people, like, strangers, just all the time. But I always think you never know if that changed someone's day. You never know if that energy
Exactly.
was exactly what somebody needed. And
Mhm.
you you don't, again, you're right. It doesn't have to be, service doesn't have to come in the forms that we traditionally think of, right? Like
Exactly.
your highest service can sometimes just be your energy and your presence, you know?
Exactly.
And I think that people are finally starting to tune into that on a self level, right? Like,
Yes.
okay, if I get my energy right for myself and start feeling in a good place, and I can share that, that is a highest service situation where
For
I am
sure.
feeling good, I'm healthy in myself, and I give that energy away because I want to, right? Like
Yes.
I think sometimes people think of service as sacrifice, right? And this is kind of something that's in my sphere a lot lately, that your highest service is always going to also be your highest joy, because
Hmm.
that is what harmony looks like,
Yeah.
right? And
You're serving from a place of overflow. Your cup is overflowing,
yes,
you know.
a hundred
I love
percent.
that.
And it's, I know it's kind of counterintuitive though, right? Because it looks selfish from the outset based on like the human conditioning and societal conditioning that we have, right? Taking
Hmm.
care of you first is selfish. And
Mm.
but I think
Growing up in a Latin family, girl. Oh, that
you have a
that
lot.
guilt, that Latin guilt is for real, for real.
Yeah.
Woo!
We were Catholic for a while when I was growing up. So,
Ugh,
there's, I think there's a little bit of that in there. Yeah, there's a lot of, I understand that guilt element.
yeah.
You're
But
born bad.
you know what? We all have different, we are all so beautifully different and all have beautifully different things to bring to the table. And some days your cup is going to be empty in some things and overflowing in other things. You
Hmm.
may have an overabundance of the need to want to talk to somebody versus, and but yet the other cups of like money or this
Hmm.
or that might be low, but you
Right.
have this overabundance to want to talk to someone. Well, you know what, there's someone that needs to be talked to, so go find that person.
Right. Because that's the balance of nature, right?
That's the balance.
And I think that's something I remind myself of a lot lately too, is that, nature balances itself out and we are still part of nature. That idea that we're separate from nature just because we're in our houses with walls, we're not, you don't have to be out in the park to still remember that you are a part of nature. It's certainly a great way to tap into it, but you're not separate
Exactly.
of it ever. Right. And so, like, the
Exactly.
harmony and the balance is absolutely available to us. And so do you work with that element in what you do a little bit, that idea of finding that balance?
For sure. So I teach spiritual development classes,
Right.
and I take on one mentee a year. And the whole first half of the training is for the self, right? So
Mm-hmm.
it's, understanding where your baseline is, knowing what your shifts look like, knowing what your thresholds are, knowing the kind of boundaries you need to have for yourself at any given time. Like a lot of shadow work, a lot of
Mm-hmm.
like self work, in addition to the fun little self-care techniques, the fun
Yeah.
little the little practices to help with our clairs. That's kind of dribbled in as well in the beginning to keep the
Mm-hmm.
interest. But that's usually, at least the crust of it, that's going to be the later half of the year when we talk about, really working with spirits, going to those spirit places, the realms, being in nature and being able to work with those spirits, et cetera, et
Mm-hmm.
cetera. So really, first half is know thyself and working with self-care and spiritual hygiene. Second half is the magic and the mysticism.
I love it. And I
Yes.
think so and in your courses and things like that, can you know talk a little bit about maybe those because I think that is something again with people being more curious, there are a lot more people out there who are looking for
Mm,
guidance, right? And being able to tap in more deeply. So
for
can you,
sure.
you know, can you speak on that just a little bit and in what you do? And, you know, is there do you have maybe a little bit of a like you if you find yourself thinking or feeling this way, this might do you know what I mean? Like what I don't want to try to turn anything into an infomercial here. That's but you know.
No, yeah, yeah. So yeah, the class is definitely intended. It's intended for people who are interested in psychic mediumship development, psychic abilities, intuition development. It's also for people who are interested in spiritualism as an umbrella term and all the little subcategories that go under it. So
Mhm.
that would be spiritism, espiritismo, and some of the other subcategories. Um, and someone who's interested in magic.
Mhm.
So the classes are obviously for all levels, and they are meant to really kind of give you that foundational work to understand the science and the metaphysics of how our gifts work and how energy moves through our body and how spirits work with us like on a biological level.
I
um
love that. That's
it's complicated. It's a lot of work, and the classes are very intensive. I kind of teach them almost like college courses. So you get
okay.
a lot of information, a lot of handouts, tons of homework, and then we come back, we review, and then we move on. So it's a very intense class, but that's basically the crust of it, and it's just basically meant for those type of people, and which honestly I think is pretty much everyone.
Well, I was going to say, you know, I think everyone, yeah, everyone has the, you know, again, we're all connected. We're all one. We all have the ability to tap into this. There's certainly a
Exactly.
higher degree of curiosity than there ever used to be. Can you maybe talk a little bit about the sort of biology element of the science element just a little bit? I know that um, for me, that's something that sort of helped me to put the spiritual pieces together. Like I'm a big quantum physics nerd. Like I love quantum physics, and
Yeah.
it's amazing how so many things in spirituality and in science if you have the right perspective you can see where they sort of confirm one another, right? That they're not
Yeah.
opposing, they're not in opposition to each other, they actually agree very much with each other. You know,
Exactly.
and the things that we call magic, right? We used to call a lot of things magic that
Hmm.
we just didn't understand. So
Exactly.
having to have that balance too of, you know, magic is just science that we don't understand yet, or that we don't teach in schools yet, or whatever, right? So, but
Yeah.
can you talk about that a little bit because I think that that's also something that sorry that I'm working on is sort of being in my body more a little bit like
Mm,
sort of body awareness because I think
yes.
that there's something in that that helps you tap in a little bit like getting out of the mental,
Hmm.
right? And get into your body, get into your sensations. Can,
I would definitely recommend yoga,
yes, I've
honestly.
actually started doing yoga recently, pretty regularly, and I feel like that does help. But can you talk a little bit about that? Like is there, you know, what is it about that? Is it just because you're shutting off your mind? Is, you know, there has to be a little more to it than that, right?
Yeah, it's funny. So I'm so glad that we're entering a stage now where the body is starting to be looked at a little bit more holistically,
Mm-hmm.
and the body spirit connection can now fully integrate
Yes.
because we were having such a hard time with that.
No, 100%. Right. Like, you know, again, that science, you know, science, medicine, spirituality, like,
Yeah.
no, they're not
Yeah.
separate. Bring
Exactly.
them together.
And so when you know that, you also realize that in order to overcome a problem of the physical, I mean, of the spiritual, you got to go through the physical. You got,
Right.
and vice versa,
Mm-hmm.
in order to address either, you got to go through the other. And so, um, biologically speaking, there are proven um energy systems in our body. I mean, we have photography now that can take pictures of your aura. We have,
Mm-hmm.
there's I gotta find this YouTube. It was a documentary. oh God, I wish I can remember, but it was a scientist who literally was able to photograph using like those bioluminescent liquids that you kind of take in, they
Oh,
injected in your
yes.
body.
Mm-hmm.
And he was able to find the quote unquote pathways of our spiritual fluids, which is a different set of pathways from your blood, veins, and from your nervous system.
So more because is this can I don't know if you do anything maybe with Chinese medicine, but I know they talk about like the natties, right?
Yes,
Like energetic,
exactly.
right? Like so
Exactly.
chakras are kind of the main ones, and then you've got like a whole sort of energetic nervous
Network.
system, right?
Yes. So it's proven now. We know this now. And we also
I That's
know,
amazing. I'm gonna have to look for that.
yes, and we know about the chakras. We also know
Mhm.
that there's like 100 and something more chakras than just the seven that are so popular.
Mhm.
We also know that the chakras are the front of the body and the back of the body. It's
Right.
two, you know what I mean? So like there's so many things that are already like checked off on the list of saying, okay, we can prove this now, so we can start
Mhm.
talking about this now.
Right.
So part of that is this idea, so that those nadis, right, those, that spiritual nervous system, if you will.
Mhm.
So there is a spiritual fluid that flows through that nervous system, if you will.
Mhm.
And that spiritual fluid is 100% responsible for how our spiritual faculties, our clairs and all that, and our communication with spirits externally, how it all is able to manifest and how it all is able to work is through those fluids.
Okay.
And so my whole class is understanding those fluids, and then really getting into the self-care of the entire spiritual anatomy, so
Right.
that you are a perfect vessel for your gifts you know
Right. I love that. And it's kind of interesting, and I don't know if maybe you can talk about this a little bit, but like the thing that comes up for me when you're talking about this is sort of like we have a bit of a culture, like the sort of fitness health kick culture, right? You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like, but I think that it's kind of part of like the things that are in the broader consciousness sort of they're the things that we are trying to tell ourselves to work on in a
Mm-hmm.
different way, right? Like so are you seeing anything I guess my thought is like the collective consciousness wants to do all this diet health physical health sort of obsessiveness, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's because on another level we understand that we need to do that spiritual self-care, that we need to start really taking care of our energy more, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of it's like you said, it starts in the physical, but you have to go through the spiritual in order to get it all to work properly, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of it's like we're we have that thing in our consciousness as a big thing because we all know, okay, there's actually this other element you need to be working on and focusing on, this energetic spiritual self individually and collectively. Is that something that I don't know, do you see in even maybe just the people you work with? Is there
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, are you seeing maybe, say, from when you started doing this kind of work to
Mm-hmm.
now, are you seeing people coming in? Maybe I don't know if upgraded is the right way to say it necessarily, but people coming in at a higher level than they used to, sort of. Does that make sense?
um to talk about the first part about,
Yeah.
with the sickness and stuff. Yeah, you're 100% right. Like when something is off and the body knows something is off, it's going to inform you. And
Mm-hmm.
so being very intuitive and listening to your body is important, so like doing yoga, things like that. But we're also on this health kick. I mean, no offense, but that's kind of an American thing. I mean, if you travel, the people's lifestyles are a lot different, and the places that you see obesity is where capitalism has gotten a nice hold, and you see a lot
Right.
of like McDonald's and KFC and all
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
But if it's not in those areas, that doesn't exist. So what we're seeing here as a collective of American psyche
Mm-hmm.
is we're understanding our government is poisoning us. We're understanding that we are sick. We're
Right.
understanding that the air is dirty and our water is dirty, and our body is like, we got to do something. And
Mm-hmm.
this is that push to, like, advocate for farmers and advocate for the indigenous water protectors and
Yes.
advocate, you know what I mean? Like, this is why we're doing the things that we're doing, is because our body sees, like, we're dying. We're literally
Yeah.
dying
This is not good
slowly.
for us. We
Yeah,
have more processed stuff that is not actually food and what is sold to us as food than most places.
it's
Yeah.
wild.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of, like, from when I started doing like healing work and divination and working with students to now, I'll be honest with you, it's more that I've seen an increase in curiosity.
Okay.
The this I don't want to say upgrade, but I will say the younger generations coming in
Yes.
now are really something special. Um, and because those of us who are now like childbearing age, because we are all aware of all this stuff, we're raising them differently as well.
Right.
So I would say ask me that question in the next 20 years
Okay.
and we'll
Let
see where we're at.
I think you know what? I bless you for saying that my podcast will last that long, and so
It
will
will,
yours.
girl.
Like that's I love that we're manifesting that. We're going to have a 20-year
Yes.
check-in. It's going to be fabulous. I can't wait.
Yes.
And we're both going to look younger and more fabulous than we do now
Yeah.
because we have tapped into the right things. It's going to be great. I can't wait. I love
I
it.
love it.
That's amazing. So I do want to be mindful of your time. I know that you have your own podcast and your own things to do. Do you have anything that, is, I don't know, maybe just sort of forthright in your mind, any messages that are sort of big in your sphere
Ooh.
right now that you might want to share or talk about?
Well, I can definitely do a nice little collective reading. But in terms of like what's going on in the universe right now, because there's so many like weird things happening with the planets and shit,
I love it.
definitely take advantage because tomorrow, no, not tomorrow. Yeah, tomorrow's the new moon
Hmm.
in Virgo. So definitely take advantage of reviewing your past and
Okay.
really, taking inventory of the changes, really taking accountability for the person that you were. And if you're in a place where you're feeling stuck or you need answers, going through the past, do so with a very gentle heart, like non-judgmentally, so that you can then, as you clean out the things that no longer serve you, you are now open to inspirations and epiphanies, which will lead to the solutions to the current problems that you have right now. So just be mindful of that. Like tomorrow is a really good day for that.
I love it.
Let's see what we got for the collective here. Oh, also, if you're interested in paranormal investigations, were you asked recently or like was inquiring about that or looking into that recently?
I love paranormal investigation. I love that kind of thing. It's kind of generally in my sphere, but I have been, I mean, it's spooky season, like I want to go
Oh,
out to,
yeah, yeah.
you know what I mean? Like I want to go out to the,
But
haunted
have you
road.
ever done it before?
No, and I want to. Like I have this, and this is something that's happening a lot. So it's interesting. You kind of talk a little bit about like the energy shift kind of thing because I feel that a lot, and very in the last probably like maybe week or two, I have this like I should be at home doing this, that, and the other thing, but I just got to get out of the house. I got to go. I got to do something. I got to take a drive. I got to go for a like just this
Yes.
need for movement and motion, and I'm just like okay, but where am I supposed to be going? What do I do with this? Like,
You got
okay,
the
great.
spiritual angst.
Yeah, right. Like, what do I do with that? I have the energy. Okay, where do I put it? No, I definitely feel that. I love it.
Yes,
So you've got your tarot deck right there. I do appreciate that you are willing
I
to do a reading. I think
do.
that's really great.
So for your audience, that way we can So the advice for your audience is, okay, so this is interesting because you know how you were saying, oh, I'm glad that you said that I'll be here in 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So it's actually coming up that you will be doing a pot. It's not going to look just like this though.
Okay.
There's other things involved. And that's another reason why the paranormal investigation question came in, because once you start, you're going to get cracked out. Like you're going to love it. And there might be some shifts in that direction in terms of like your podcast, or at least incorporating the findings and the things that happened to you during these investigations
I'm
into the
so very
podcast.
excited about this. This is
You
fabulous.
know, you really should. And the reason why I say that is because right now the audience is waiting. Like it's waiting to get bigger. You know what I'm saying?
Yes,
And
I very much do.
like they're
So
waiting, and there's from what I'm seeing here, it's like for you in particular, you're actually battling with this idea, and you have a few people in mind, a few people that are also like giving you tips and like thinking like, oh well, why don't we do this, or why don't you try that, and like
I feel like
you're
I'm in this holding pattern of like, show me the obvious right path to
thing
follow.
to do.
I'm ready to do it. I don't know
So
what it is.
go on the investigation
Okay.
and just allow yourself to be open. Just see what happens. Just see what
I love
happens.
it. I love it.
All right, whatever inspiration you get, because what I'm seeing here is once you get over this hoop, you're gonna see the work ahead. It's gonna look like a lot, but as you start doing it, it's not gonna be a lot. And it's gonna
Okay.
be like that seed planting. And you're looking at, if you like do this now, you're looking at like January, where you'll start to see an increase in your audience. You'll start to see what it is, or what the temperature is like out there, and what it is that people want to see.
Okay. This is very interesting. I like this a lot.
Okay.
I'm
And
gonna
so far,
I love it. It's I have been waiting for that. Like, okay, what do I go do what? And I do. I have those like that itchy feet thing going on.
the itchy
So,
feet thing.
yeah,
Do
like
the
I got
investigation. Where are
I
you located, by the way?
so I'm in Brandon, South Dakota, and there's a road south of where I live that is like sort of the notoriously haunted road, you know. And so I want to take my sister, and I'm like, we got to just go on. They call it Spook
Just
Road. We
go.
got to just go
Yeah.
to Spook Road and just drive on Spook Road. Some spooky, maybe tomorrow night because it's the new moon and it'll be super dark.
Yeah, fuck
I
it. Get a
love
get a
it. Go
joint and just go out there and just sit, and yeah, and
and
you
just
just
see who
let it
talks to
happen.
me. I love
Mhm,
it. I love
mhm.
it. I'm super excited. I think we might just have to just go and just see what happens. I'm super. I love it.
But don't be stupid. You got to wear something protective. You got to put, you got to do
Oh,
something.
I got.
Okay.
I will bring along. We'll bring along my black tourmaline. I've got some of Dad's
Yes.
ashes. Be like, I always have Dad's ashes. Some of my Dad's ashes in my car. So like, I'm always.
Beautiful.
Dad's always helping take care of me when I'm driving.
Oh, that's beautiful. But
Yay!
yes. Yes.
I'm excited. I'm gonna try it. I love it. Amazing. Well, I thank you so much for being here. Thank you for doing that reading too. That's amazing. I am definitely going to share your links and your information in the description below. So is there anything you want to tell people about coming to find you, or anything you have upcoming?
For sure. So I'm actually working on a self-published book. And I will
Awesome.
get you in on those details as soon as I can.
Oh,
Um
yes, we definitely want to share that for sure.
and obviously you guys can reach me on my website or on any of the social media platforms at the Magickal Solution, and that's magical with a CK.
Mhm.
And then as far as like the collective, you guys like it's okay. Not to be like a Debbie Downer or anything like that,
Okay.
but like we live in a world where it's paradox, it's duality. It's
Yeah.
when something swings one way, it's going to swing the other. That's just how it fucking works right here. And knowing that as we move forward as a collective of light beings, and as a collective of service, spiritual service people,
Hmm.
we're going to notice that backlash also, and
Right.
it's going to feel like spiritual warfare. And I
Hmm.
promise you there's the other side of it. Okay,
Yeah.
we're gonna get out on the other side. So
Mm-hmm.
just, hold steadfast. Take classes like mine, for
Right.
example, where you learn those spiritual hygiene techniques, those protection techniques, and those ways where you can build relationships with your spirits for protection. Because you're gonna need it. It is what it
Well,
is.
and
And
I
I
would
know,
say, this is what I really like about meeting new people like you and having this podcast is I love the idea of having people like you being presented to more of an audience to because you never know who's going to resonate with what and you never know who's going to
exactly.
need the message and look and say, I connect with you and I think your class would be right for me. Right. And so like
Exactly.
I love the idea of like being a sort of intermediary, I guess, in that way, like because I do. I think it's that diversity thing that you talked about. There's so many different people, and we are all so very different because everyone is going to need something different that they can connect to,
Of course.
right?
Of
Like,
course, we're all at different levels of our spiritual growth, and we got to be
yes.
patient with each other. And it's
Mm-hmm.
not about like who's farther than the other or who's more high vibe than the other. It's not
Right.
about that, like we're all in this together. It's just some people are at different states of awareness, you know?
And that's where that is for them is valid for them. And you have to let them have it
Exactly.
because you don't know what they're meant to be learning in it right now, and
And
even
just
if,
help where you can and help where
right.
you can.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. My practices are very, very big on, advocacy, community
Mm-hmm.
service, and really doing charity work wherever you can.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're right, you never know where people are, and you want to meet them where they are to help them,
Yes, because
you
that's
know?
that's the only place you can meet them is where they are,
Exactly.
right?
And don't assume that just because the man is in a mansion somewhere that he doesn't need help too. It's different. You
No,
know what I
it's
mean?
right. Everyone needs to have like we're all on this path together and we're all trying to get back to I don't know, get back home in a sense, right? Get back to your
Get
truest
back
self.
home. I love that. Yes.
Hmm.
Yes.
And some of us, if we know the road ahead a little bit better, then go back and grab some friends. And hey,
Yeah,
I help
longer
you.
table, not higher walls.
Yes, I love it. I love it. Yes.
Oh my God, it was so much fun. You are so
This has
easy to
been
talk to.
I love that you will have to come back before 20 years so that we can have another conversation. I
When
do.
the book comes out, I'll send it to
Yes.
you.
Oh,
I'll send it
absolutely
to you.
do. I do. I love your energy. I thank you so much for joining me. I really do appreciate it. It's been great. I do hope we can talk again because I've really enjoyed this.
Me too. Me too. Loose and loose to all of your viewers out there, you guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. Hi again, friends. That was my conversation with Leilani of The Magickal Solution. I do have her website and her social media links in the description, so you can certainly follow her, find her online, and utilize her services. I do hope that you'll check her out. Again, I just loved her energy, loved the conversation. I do hope she'll come back sometime. If you'd like to support more of this podcast, you can check out my Patreon. That's patreon.com/AbernathyFranklin. And that's the umbrella podcast for this podcast, as well as my fictional podcast, The Adventures of Abernathy Franklin. Thank you so much again, everyone, for listening. Don't forget to like, share, leave a comment or a review. Tell your friends. And until next time, my earthbound and cosmic friends, wherever you are out there, I hope you're doing well.